let's jump to the second presentation, which is by Muhammad Badruddin, and the topic is Genealogy of Islamic Legal Thought in Europe, Lessons from Muslim Communities in Era of Division. So from economic freedom, we jump into pluralism. Looking forward to Badr's presentation.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, because some of you were calling for ijtihad, reopening the gates of ijtihad, I will take you to a quick visit to Medina Fiqh, not Bazaar, through this brief genealogy of Islamic legal thought in Europe. So I began with the central question of my paper. So what can an understanding of Islamic legal landscape in Europe offer us? Can it promote peaceful coexistence in our time? And what do we risk by ignoring the development of Islamic jurisprudence in Europe? These are the key questions of the paper. And before I move on, I just want to highlight that in a world fragmenting daily into small pieces, Islamic discourse is even more vulnerable to fragmentation into mutually hostile parts. And this is because the Islamic world consists of a fabric of diverse ethnicities, peoples, schools of thought, customs, languages, and languages across centuries of expansion and contraction, peace and war. In the Islamic intellectual system, fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, follows kalam. Yeah, here. Fiqh follows theology or kalam in shaping Muslim consciousness. And as some of you referred to the decadence or the collapse in research and thinking somewhere around the 12th century. So research in kalam weakened, and that was followed by a contraction in the study of usul al-fiqh. Fiqh itself rose and fell until in public discourse it became reduced to the duality, or what I want to call the duality or dichotomy of halal versus haram and sunnah versus bid'ah in public discourse. Yet we know that al-ahkam al-taklifiyya, or the normative rulings related to our acts as Muslims and deeds, are more than that. They are more than sunnah and bid'ah and halal and haram. And usul scholars, theorists discuss 5 according to Jumhur al-Usuliyin and 7 according to the Hanafis. Sometimes these Imam al-Haramain in his waraqat also said that al-ahkam al-taklifiyya are 5, adding the rukhsa wal-azima in addition to al-mubah, al-haram, al-makruh, al-mustahab, wal-wajib. So he added 2 more, al-rukhsa, al-fasid, wal-sahih, and some sources add more than that. So this is the first dilemma for me, that we are reducing the discourse, the legal discourse, into halal versus haram. This is what we often hear if we if we Google a few things, a few words, hukmu kada, or the ruling of something, or that's what we have been hearing or listening to on media for a couple of decades now. This reduction of the ahkam, which diminishes diversity, is often divorced from an awareness of its epistemological foundations, its intellectual tools, such as language and logic, and its historical development rooted in foundational texts, such as the verse of Surah At-Tawbah. I put there a translation, I hope that it's clear. وَمَا كَانَ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنْ يَنْفِرُوا كَافَّةً فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ وَلِيُنْذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يحذرون, Surah At-Tawbah. So fiqh was deeply shaped by such foundational texts, in addition to early definitions or broader and more comprehensive definitions and concepts of fiqh, such as the definition of Imam Abu Hanifa, al-fiqh ma'rifatu al-nafsi ma laha wa ma alayha. Al-fiqh is self-knowledge, self-awareness. It's not just to do something mechanically, this is halal, this is haram. It's broader than, it's more dynamic, it's richer and more intellectually enlightening and inspiring. Although the jurists later on specialized the concept of fiqh within the theory of Islamic legislation, they did not overlook its centrality in the Islamic system of knowledge and in the lived reality of Muslims. So the journey of Islamic legal thought, especially in its early stages, here, I cannot cover here in 20 minutes the journey of Islamic legal thought across Europe, so I'm highlighting a few cases, especially or specifically the early cases across the Mediterranean, which was also a hub for thoughts, for ethnicities, languages, etc., and religions. This journey offers a discourse far more liberated, comprehensive, inclusive, and effective despite the political instabilities of that era than the dominant discourse today. And what I mean by the dominant discourse today, again, this is a very large topic. I want to highlight two phenomena of two practices, two concepts which affect or impact Islamic jurisprudence nowadays. These two dominant reductionist discourses dominating nowadays in Europe are these two. The first is what I call the Salafi discourse in its multiple forms. You have the Wahhabi, you have the Reformist, you have the Jihadi, and etc. is strongly present in Europe, and it is shaping negatively, of course, the legacy of the Islamic legal thought across Europe. And the second, this might be surprising for some of you, the Maqasidi-centered discourse. Maqasid-centered discourse for me is, in my humble opinion, the other face of the Salafi discourse. Why? Because today, many researchers in the West, in Western universities, in the Arab world, similarly, they emphasize maqasid, or the higher objective of law, often linked to Shatibi and Ghazali and Qarafi and this generation of scholars. Nowadays, we have a increasingly an exclusive discussion or treatment of maqasid. So I said that they use it as a gateway to intellectual liberation and juridical flexibility and the bridge to modernity, in other words. So this, while being largely true, maqasid are unfortunately presented as an independent science or a miraculous tool of renewal. In reality, maqasid is just another branch of usul al-fiqh. Maqasid is one of the chapters studied in usul al-fiqh. You go across a full manual or textbook of usul al-fiqh. The last chapters are maqasid. So you cannot just pick up the chapter of maqasid and study it, and then you say, like, we are coming up with some new solutions out of nowhere. This is just like the Salafis who say, we want the Islamic discourse, the Islamic version that we want it to prevail is a literalist version. It's solely based on a hadith or a text, like the literal, or, that zahiriyya, like exaggeration in literal approach. So the same thing, I found that many researchers are approaching maqasid this way. They disconnect maqasid from its very rich rational, linguistic, and intellectual context and framework. The next point. So my paper claims that educating Muslim youth and Muslims in general in Europe about the structure of the legal thought or the judicial system in the European Mediterranean region, especially since this was a formative phase of Islamic jurisprudence, will help European Muslims gain intellectual independence, opening a window toward freedom and coexistence. So hence, we should rediscover these 3 points. The legal theory of Islam in Europe, which was formed through multiple or multi-madhab and multi-ethnic networks, and that we need to understand that the journey of Islamic legal thought in Europe enjoyed diverse pedagogical traditions, and here I want to refer to Özlem's point, how to balance individual responsibility or moral responsibility with when we talk about free markets. So here pedagogy and education steps in. And finally, Islamic jurisprudence never ceased evolving in Europe before modern times. Intellectual freedom is intrinsic to it. So only by internalizing this diversity and development can European Muslims enjoy cultural plurality, intellectual freedom, and contribute to ethical and social awareness and coexistence. Even during periods of conflict, greater intellectual production emerged from this context, from this perception, from this broader approach to Islamic legal thought in Europe. Before the Catholic expulsion of Muslims and Jews from Al-Andalus, the incident known as historically as Reconquista, the Umayyad ruler Al-Hakam ibn Hisham, or Hakam I, expelled thousands of Muslims, including fuqaha, jurists, following a Maliki revolution in Al-Andalus. Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, one of the key reporters and transmitters of Al-Muwatta of Imam Malik ibn Anas, led what is historically known as Mawqi'atu al-Rabad, the revolt of al-Rabad in Qurtuba. So based on that, the thousands were exiled, and some settled in Iqritish. And Iqritish, or Crete nowadays in Europe, those who fled from the tyranny of the ruler in Al-Andalus were fuqaha, jurists from Al-Andalus, settled in Crete. So they were refugees, and established one of the earliest Islamic emirates around 824. And traces of a 1 century old society and tradition can still be found across a variety of historical sources. Al-Qadi Abu al-Hasan al-Talbani, or al-Tilbani, a Maliki jurist and judge. So the first thing when we read the biography of this judge, we know that in Crete there was qada, there was a system of qada, which opens other windows on education, on market. Some of you said that Prophet ﷺ arrived in Medina, the first thing he did, he established a market, suq. So having a qadi, a teacher, a mufti, etc., refers to a profound and solid settlement in Crete. There are even documented debates between Al-Qadi Tilbani, Abu al-Hasan, with Nicephorus, the emperor of Crete, after the fall of Islamic system in the island. We can find other traces from the region which tell a greater stability and more profound legal tradition marked by ethnic, linguistic, and methodological diversity. Now, not far from Iqritish or Crete, Muslims ruled Siqiliya. Siqiliya, or Sicily, roughly for 2 centuries. And here another figure can be introduced, Asad ibn al-Furat, from Harran, originally from Harran, a student of Imam Malik, and interestingly, of Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the student of Abu Hanifa, and al-Qadi Abu Yusuf. So this Asad ibn al-Furat, who was a commander, leader, military leader, and judge, and also a student of Malik ibn Anas personally, and Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, and al-Qadi Abu Yusuf, all together. So Asad embodied Hanafi, Maliki, fiqh, and usul synthesis in his early collection or book called Al-Asadiyya. After a long journey from Tunisia to Medina to Iraq to Sicily and back to Tunisia. The journey was recorded both by Hanafis and Malikis. Even though being officially Maliki, Asad al-Furat, this journey must tell us a lot in sociology, economics, politics, literature, and beyond. Because this jurist, who was, as I said, also a commander and a judge, insisted on meeting different people from different backgrounds, from different methodological approaches of ijtihad, of interpretation of texts, and asking them about their thoughts and approaches. His book, unfortunately, Al-Asadiyya, is lost, ضاعت, and never found. But a lot of Asad's work was preserved because the book continued to travel throughout the Maliki lineage. Nevertheless, it remains a foundational milestone in the development of comparative fiqh and bringing this dialogue between the Ahnaf and the Malikiyya into a European context. Now, when I will stay a little bit more with Siqliyya, with Sicily.
5 minutes.
Oh, no. If you look at right, so we leave Siqliyya. We go to.
You have to make choice.
There are many destinations. So between the 13th century and the 14th century, fiqh is often said to have become less genuine and creative, according to many critiques. A quick look at one of the books which developed from this journey of al-Asadiyya and Asad al-Furat is Mukhtasar Khalil. Mukhtasar Khalil ibn Ishaq, an Egyptian scholar from the 13th century, was criticized for its extreme condensation or ikhtisar, highly difficult language and heavy use of symbols, especially because the work was intended to be studied as a matan or a manual by scholars qualified to issue fatwa. Well, I don't want to discuss the critiques here, but I want to say that I think that Khalil using that language and condensation, etc., was for a purpose, for a reason. It was not just a coincidence. Khalil was not just a jurist. His name, his biography, it's always said Khalil ibn Ishaq al-Jundi. Jundi. He was a soldier in Egypt. So, in my view, it's no coincidence that he relied heavily on these 4 sources. Mukhtasar Khalil is based on these 4 sources. By the way, Mukhtasar Khalil is the first book until now used in Maliki jurisprudence, like for fatwa. Everywhere, wherever the Maliki madhab is applied and practiced, Mukhtasar Khalil is the top level of ifta after Mukhtasar al-Akhdari wa Ibn Ashir wa Risalat ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani. So I think that the 4 Malikis from the 11th and 12th centuries, 3 of them, as you can see here, try to put their origins, 3 of them were Europeans. Abu Abdullah al-Mazari from Sicily, Ibn Yunus al-Siqli from Siqliyya, from Sicily, and Ibn Rushd, the grandfather, not Averroes, Ibn Rushd al-Qurtubi, al-Jadd. These 4, so he's a Qurtubi from Al-Andalus. So Mukhtasar Khalil, until now, when you study it in Arabic, or you directly or indirectly, you are following European methodologies, opinions, and techniques, obviously reported or reshaped by or at least inspired by the founder of the madhab, Malik ibn Anas. The last, al-Lakhmi, is a Tunisian scholar. One final point and another feature before the conclusion. of Islamic legal thought in Europe is that European Muslim jurists employed local languages alongside Arabic in their fatwas, especially in books or category of fiqh books called nawazil, which are like a collection of local incidents or events or questions related to that region or part of the country. This linguistic openness also influenced other forms of communication, such as poetry. And if you look at an Andalusian genre, you probably heard of muwashahat and asjal genres, for example, through the lens of the biggest and the most preserved collection of this genre is Ibn Quzman, Asjal Ibn Quzman, the collection of Ibn Quzman, El Cancionero in Spanish. This book was widely studied by Orientalists such as Ribera, Nickel, and Gomez, etc. And served as an artistic and anthropological encyclopedia. These were European Islamic literary inventions blending Arabic, Romance, Hebrew, and Berber. For conclusion, and I'm just jumping some sections, building on the rich intellectual and cultural context of medieval, this is how genealogy looks like. So this is the isnad, the chain of these schools, both Maliki and Hanafi, in the Mediterranean region, connected through Asad ibn al-Furat, Asadiyya. And then I tried to add other disciplines. Those in purple, they are not necessarily fuqaha, they're not necessarily jurists, but they were deeply influenced by the discourse, the comprehensive discourse of the legal thought established and taught by local fuqaha and usuliyin in Europe. So I said that building on this, the rich intellectual and cultural context on medieval Europe, Islamic legal thought bridged and shaped multiple dimensions of life, including language, literature, architecture, pedagogy, moral and spiritual formation, and the administration of justice, qada, creating a civilizational framework that fostered coexistence among diverse communities. This integration of disciplines functioned as a comprehensive umbrella under which knowledge, ethical reflection, and social cohesion were cultivated together. Although European fiqh eventually declined in regions such as Sicily and Crete and Andalus, it continued to interact for some time with the vibrant and pluralistic intellectual life of the Iberian Peninsula. Even when certain scholars like al-madhahib, like al-Awza'iyya, al-madhhab al-Awza'i, and al-Zahiriyya, and others fell into obscurity, the underlying structures of comparative reasoning, ethical engagement, and pedagogical practice persisted. This legacy left a lasting imprint on the trajectory of Islamic law and thought in Europe, inspiring Muslims in other parts of the continent to confront new challenges in the wake of the Reconquista. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Badruddin, for historical analysis. Very interesting. I open the floor for questions and comments.
I think it is better if we receive the questions afterwards.
After the second presentation?
Because we like kind of time.
Yeah.
The presentation is short, actually, 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Okay, so let's have some questions on Badr's presentation, and then please say.
First of all, thank you. That was amazing. I'm not sure if have you seen Tariq Hussein's latest book on Muslim Europe? Because I mean, what you've done is not only shattered this dichotomy between halal, haram, and bid'ah and sunnah, but you've also shattered another very important dichotomy of Western and Eastern Mediterranean. You're locating a central Mediterranean geography, which is incredibly important. So thank you for that. But on that topic, then, how do you think this period and this phenomenon, how do you think it affected Muslim identity more broadly, if at all, and European Muslim identity specifically? How do these people see themselves? Do they see themselves as European?
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any contact with these people mentioned, like these fuqaha.
I thought they were on speed dial for you.
So that's very brilliant point. Thank you, sorry. So the first part of the question: how did that influence European Muslims or Muslims in general? I think that the influence nowadays is very marginalized or reduced due to those influences. At least the two I wanted to highlight: the radical discourses or approaches from one side, and there are also other external factors in the international context, policies and so forth. So I think that the influence, at least to that level or to that specific regions I was mentioning, I think that it is very weak, and very few people. I'm here. I'm not using any official statistics, but I can use my humble experience. I mean, I worked in. I was running an Islamic center in France, and now I'm lecturing in the Czech Republic, doing research there. So I can say that many children of Muslims there, you know, from Arabic, African, or Asian backgrounds, or even converts, they see clearly, they see it like crystal clear that the discourse that exclusively represents Islam is this exclusivist interpretation of Islam, that is Salafism in its different interpretations or manifestations. Additionally, I added that this Puritanist approach created a new phase, a new wave of scholars who are not Muslims, but they are writing and working on Islam through the lens of Salafism, and they are obsessed with cleaning Islam. They talk, for example, about Sufism or saints or shrines or things that are questions of disagreement in Islamic fiqh. They have nothing to do with aqidah. That most of these things, graves and shrines and tasawwuf things, they are discussed in fiqh within a jurisprudential framework. You find these people who are, as I said, like they are Westerners, they are non-Muslim, that they are doing anthropological research, and they side by, interestingly, by that narrative of the Salaf. Why? Because media, you Google something like that, you find that Islam Web or Islamic question and answer, Ibn Baz said, and so forth. With respect to all approaches and schools, I'm just saying what is going on. And the second thing is that how do these people introduce themselves? If you refer to these ancient figures like Asad al-Furat, and if we meet them through their biographies, because they are very well documented, and we can even look at like we can verify that easily through these chains of transmission, which is part of the educational system in legal thought. So if you look at them, they had this pluralistic and inclusive approach. I don't know if they say that I am European, but in the biographies, for example, pick up Tartib al-Madarik of Al-Qadi Iyad, 11th century source encyclopedia, or Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, which is more objective maybe because Dhahabi was not a Maliki scholar. So if you read the biographies of this generation of scholars, you will find a list of attributions. They say al-Maghribi, al-Siqilli, al-Andalusi. So they mention all the possible attributes. And here, because I can give an example of one controversial figure, Jawhar al-Siqilli. Jawhar al-Siqilli believed to be the conqueror of, not the conqueror, the builder of Cairo and al-Azhar. Right, Jami' al-Azhar was built by a person called Jawhar al-Siqilli. So Jawhar, in his biographies, we find two sifat, two adjectives, two attributions. We find al-Siqilli, which is the most famous one, and al-Saqlabi, which means the Slavic. Al-Saqlabi, a singular of Saqaliba, which is Slavs. So was Jawhar Saqlabi, a Slav, or a Sicilian? Was he Siqilli or Saqlabi? Now, to solve this dilemma, which is an ongoing debate actually, I mean, in all cases, Jawhar was under the Fatimid rule, right? Fatimid dynasty. They built Al-Azhar, they built Al-Qahira. They were neither Malikiya wala Shafi wala Hanaf, they were Shia. So they built Al-Azhar. Now, to solve the dilemma, some people suggest that these two attributions or ethnicities are both correct. He was originally Slav, who was Saqlabi Aslan. He's originally Slav because the Slavs were joined Islam and Muslim communities and political work and engagement very early, earlier than the Sicilians. And he is Sicilian because he lived there. He's one of the early conquerors of Sicily.
Sorry, we can definitely solve that problem in a few hours, but maybe a couple of minutes.
I want to add something just as short.
Yeah,
at this point, we may ask the question that is there a distinctive European identity at that time, as today? Perhaps not.
Perhaps not, but it was visible. It was visible in their legislative legacy. We see that we heard Ali in the morning saying that Ash-Shatibi. Why did he mention Ash-Shatibi?
Because he was born there.
But what was his contribution? So Ash-Shatibi.
Since there is no European domination, I don't think they try to show that we are Europe.
No, I don't think that they tried that. But I think that Europe, as a cultural context, influenced their thought.
Yeah, Mawqaf.
That's what I believe. Yeah.
Any other question?
Yes, I have a very short question, which might not be relevant to the paper, but it's somehow linked. Now let's talk about the 21st century now in Europe. I'm not sure where are you based, but
In Prague.
in Prague. Okay, good. So you are in Europe. So in the UK now, if I ask somebody, if I go to the masjid and then they say that we have to talk about Islam, always they talk about Sirah. I don't see them talking about your Cambridge also. They don't much talk about fiqh, tawheed, aqidah. Most of the discussion about Sirah. And then these are considered to be alim. So the question now in Europe, so what it means to be alim. So alim in Saudi Arabia, alim in Egypt is a scholar, someone who has deep knowledge in fiqh, deep knowledge of tafsir, deep knowledge in Quran. But in Europe it's not the case. So what does it mean to be alim in Europe?
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question. But I just wanted to I cannot answer. Huh?
Yeah.
But when?
Now,
Yeah,
nowadays.
it's 21st
Nowadays.
century, because this
Would you like to answer that question?
very important question because it's linked to what you
Well, if you want, I can try. But if you want to discuss it later, I can also do that.
Very quickly, like a brief
Uh,
answer.
It's linked, by the way, it's not far.
Well, the reason for which we discuss Sirah and not to reduce the importance of Sirah Nabawiyya, but it's less crucial and fundamental in forming a scholar in the hierarchy of Islamic knowledge. The reason why we discuss Sirah in mosques in Europe is primarily because it's less controversial. If you start discussing fiqh in a mosque, you will have, you know what happens. So fiqh that's it. That's the nature of fiqh itself.
Yeah.
It's based on ikhtilaf, on disagreement. So it's not a great idea to discuss fiqh issues unless it's a circle of study with qualified people. So it's a good idea to discuss sirah in a mosque. The concept of alim is mostly here in Europe is mostly connected to the broader context of Islam and Islamic world. By the way, this is an anecdote. Maybe last year or 2 years ago, I was in the airport and I met Sheikh Mustafa Siric, the former mufti of Bosnia. Was that? Yeah. I saw him many times, but this time in particular at the airport, we were discussing something, and he himself brought this thing that أنا من الصقالبة. Because I mentioned that he did not say that, but because I mentioned that I did a PhD on Islamic jurisprudence in Al-Andalus, right?
What did he say?
He said, I am from Saqaliba, I am from the Slavs, because the Slavs are best known for their deep influence in Andalusian society, jurisprudence, legal thought, etc. Right? They had a very strong influence, unlike many people who think that it was an Arabic civilization. It was not. So, so I think that a alim in European context cannot be separated from Sheikh Mustafa, maybe other names before him. Qadi al-Jama'a, Shaykh al-Islam, Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari and others, they were connected to Al-Azhar, they were connected to Zaytuna, they were connected to the Al-Qarawiyyin, the Islamic centers across the Muslim world. So it's hard to say that a European scholar nowadays is a 100% European production.
Right, thank you.